In my experience, if you are not radically grateful every day, resentment always takes over. This insight is hammered home by Diana Butler Bass in her book Grounded Grateful. On August 10th, in a Saturday newspaper, I was drawn into an article by the heading, "I went back to the Mass and found solace in the church." The article tells the story of Danny O'Donoghue, who is frontman for the band The Script, about how grief arising from the sudden death of a friend and heavy drinking led him to a very low place. Danny's story resonates with the striking message in the letter to the Ephesians, our second reading this weekend, where Paul exhorts, "Do not drug yourself with wine. This is simply dissipation. Be filled with the Spirit." And then encourages, "Sing the words and tunes of the psalms and hymns when you are together, and go on singing and chanting to the Lord in your heart, so that always and everywhere you are giving thanks to God." Danny reveals that while he had stopped going to church for years, that he never lost his faith. Danny expresses himself like this: "But I did question my faith, and I openly searched with the brain that God gave me. I'd be looking behind doors going, 'Is it there?'" Strikingly, in the years away from the church, Danny announces, "I lost a place where I could go and practice gratitude." Danny now says, "I go to the gym to work out. I go to the studio to make music." And in answer to the question, what is he doing for his spiritual side, Danny gently replies, "I found solace in the church. It's a beautiful space." Describing his unexpected return to church, Danny shares, "When I first went, there was Mass on, and I went in and sat at the back. That first experience untapped something for me." He further outlines, "I used to sing in church. I was an altar boy for years. I knew all the lingo and all the psalms and responses. On returning to church, he asserts that he started to really love it again." In John's Gospel, chapter 6, Jesus shares that "my flesh is real food and my blood is real drink." The verb for giving thanks, Eucharisteo, is the origin of the Church's name for the sacrament commemorating the Last Supper, the Eucharist. Catholic faith helps us to see that, like a shared loaf, wine from a shared cup is also a sign of fellowship. Faith also encourages us to see wine as a symbol of joy, festivity, and abundance, and of divine life. On reading John's Gospel this weekend, we are helped to remember that because Jesus' blood is shed or poured out, that this poignantly signifies a violent death, and thereby offers us a window to the inner reality of Jesus' passion. All of this helps us to recall that the Church has always understood the Eucharistic meal as not only a making present of the past, the passion, but also as a foretaste of the future. Somewhat surprisingly, it was Nietzsche who argued that all things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails at a given time is a function of power and not truth. Those gathered around Jesus struggled divisively to interpret his pronouncement that anyone who eats this bread will live forever, and the bread that I shall give is my flesh for the life of the world. Powerful forces wanted to control the interpretation narrative around Jesus' message. In a stunning short book called Making All Things New, Henry Neumann helps us to move towards the truth. He shares that worrying causes us to be all over the place, but seldom at home. He also points out that one way to express the spiritual crisis of our time is to say that most of us have an address, but cannot be found there. We know where we belong, but we keep being pulled away in many directions as if we were still homeless. All of these other things keep demanding our attention. They lead us so far from home that we eventually forget our true address. That is the place where we can be addressed. Personally, I find that when I am fearful, that Mass somehow quietly untaps me and prompts me to whisper words of gratitude, and in the imagery of the book of Proverbs gives me new perception, helping me to understand that life is a balance between holding on and letting go. Amen.